All right, ramblers, let's ramble. I got a message the other day from a former student because I'm not teaching in the summer. A student that's still following politics, and the student wanted to know what I thought of the RFK Jr. speech, not necessarily how it would affect the election or any of the partisan stuff, but just what I thought of the speech in itself. And I thought I would go over. I thought there are four things that I got the most out of it, and they were things that were either unique to political speeches or were, for the first time in a long time, actually very, very honest, which you don't get a lot in political speeches. So I'm going to share a few of these points. Let's bring up RFK. Let's bring up the man himself, son of former RFK Sr., which would have been Bobby Kennedy, whose father was assassinated after JFK was assassinated. So let's talk about let me just make sure this is a little bigger here. All right. Hope we're doing okay. So, four things really that I got out of it the most. And the first thing I'd like to talk about is the flack that he's getting from people in the Democratic Party, right? And what they're acting like is if this guy is a sellout, that RFK Jr. is a sellout. Now, if you've been following the guy, over the last few years, first of all, he doesn't need to sell out. He's a Kennedy. He doesn't need any of this, actually. And if he wanted to stay within the Democratic Party and and stay friendly with the other Kennedys, he easily could have done that. So there's this notion that he's leaving the Democratic Party, but as some people have said, this is not a unique statement, but if people have said, I never left the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has left me. In fact, Jimmy Doris, he said that a few times on his show. Let's talk about how the Democratic Party have treated him. They refused to give him secret security protection, even though he was trending at around 5% of the vote, which is actually very, very significant. As a third party to get 5% of the vote, you're now into spoiler territory, which means this is important. And with all of his ties to the Democratic Party in the past, they refused to give him Secret Service protection. They have been active in trying to get him off the ballots in many of the states. Right? So when people talk about anti-democratic Republicans and Trump and the rest, remember when they criticize people, they're really basically just looking at themselves in the mirror when they talk about this kind of nonsense, because they are actively trying to get him and other third parties, including Jill Stein and the Green Party, off of ballots in many states. So this democratic nonsense about saving democracy is BS. The other thing as well is that he specifically discussed were these endless wars and the healthcare crisis, something that the Democrats used to talk about. 70s, in the 80s, they would talk about it. Of course, now they're just a neocon party, right? The Democrats don't talk about free speech anymore, and he still does. He hasn't changed. He hasn't changed on any of these issues. He still supports labor. The Democrats do not support labor anymore. This is from Time magazine, not exactly a bastion of conservative thinking, right? You read that correctly. Biden decided the broader economy was a bigger priority than 100,000 freight rail workers having any paid sick leave in their next contract. So what we had were, excuse me, Biden signed into law a measure that makes the rail strike illegal. What you had were Democrats actually going against the railroad workers in this case. And it wasn't just this. Amazon in New York was trying to form a union so they didn't have to pee in a bottle while they were making deliveries because of the absolutely shitty conditions that Amazon workers have to work within. And there were, people from the squad like AOC basically had no support gave no support to, I can't remember what his first name was. It might have been Christian. Last name was Smalls. He was a black gentleman who was trying to start the union in New York. And basically, he wasn't getting much support from the Democrats. But again, this used to be the party of labor, right? This is also the party that said that they were going to close down Guantanamo Bay. Barack Obama said that. And of course, they didn't. Barack Obama, in fact, rescinded habeas corpus so that many of these individuals didn't even get a trial. It was 22 years ago this day, the U.S. opened a military prison in Guantanamo Bay, blah, blah, blah. The prison remains open today. It still holds 30 men, many of whom have never been criminally charged. Since 9/11, they haven't been criminally charged. And you're going to say, well, they're terrorists, so who cares? Well, how do you know? They have no rights. So, this is just a few things. I could have gone on forever, but RFK has not changed his position on these things that the Democratic Party used to be proud of. He didn't leave the Democratic Party. They basically have just become a neocon party. And when you talk about democracy, why didn't they allow him to basically just run for VP and have an open primary for VP? You got to remember, this is the same party. Julian Assange proved this. We know this now. They fixed the 2016 primaries. Podesta, Brazil, Debbie Wasserman Schultz. This has all been proven. This is factual. They had to resign. They had to admit it. They came out and basically apologized, these two in particular. And this warmongering scumbag over here, Podesta, basically, again, just at the time it was Bernie and they wanted Clinton. So they fixed the primaries for Clinton over Bernie. And then 2020, they did the same thing again. And the start of Kamala Harris's campaign, she didn't receive one vote. She hasn't had a vote in the primary, and yet she is the nominee. They could have had an open primary, by the way, after Biden stepped down. They have plenty of time to do so. She's not going around giving any speeches, so they easily could have had somebody else like RFK Jr. All of these things that he's been talking about in his speech, he could have done this for the Democratic Party. The second thing that he spent a long time talking about, this message to supporters, which seemed very genuine, but the honest thing that he talked about was that winning is not realistic. So he's basically going to be a spoiler candidate if he stayed in the race, especially, as he said, within the swing states. And what he's thinking is, well, hold on here. If I'm a problem in a certain swing state, and because I'm a problem, the Democrats may win that state, and yet everything that they are doing goes against my being. So more war in Ukraine, more anti-free speech policies, the continuing to gaslight anybody that wants to make the country health conscious, or at least not have, the highest level of childhood obesity in the world, or one of the highest. He's saying something that is true and honest, which most politicians won't say, is that I can't win, but maybe I can make a change. Right? Maybe I can turn this electoral support. Now, what other people would do is say, if anybody's watched Succession, you watched the Connor, who basically was trending at 1%, but he was staying in the race. Why? Because maybe he thought he could get a gig out of it, like an ambassadorship, a diplomat status somewhere, maybe get a job in a cabinet, right? Or in some department. That's what most people would do. He could do that. RFK easily could have done that. But what he wants is real change. Again, war, censorship, healthcare. He wants real change, right? So he is turning his electoral support, that 5%, into change and not career advancement. And I thought that the way he laid that out to his supporters was genuine and sincere and authentic. Now, again, he's a politician. And anybody that knows me knows that I have very little respect for politicians. And I actually don't listen to most speeches because I know most of them are garbage. I'm going to do this. I'm the best. They're the worst. They did this. We were the best. We had the highest outcomes. They had the lowest outcomes. It's all nonsense. It's all BS. But if you listen to this speech of about 46 minutes, I define you to find those typical, political lies that you see in all political speeches. Sabrina Savati had mentioned, she stopped her analysis at some point when she was talking about that he said that he was talking to everybody. And yet, as you've seen, Kamala Harris, the Democrats are not talking to anybody. She made a point of saying that there are some independent journalists that he didn't talk to, but for the most part, he has been on a lot of shows. He went to shows that were very hostile to him. Right? He talked to Crystal Ball, who was very hostile to him. Didn't give him a chance to outline his policies and his thoughts on, especially on the COVID censorship. He has a chance to turn that electoral support into making children healthier and to stopping wars and to stopping censorship. So if he can do that, that's a good thing, right? Big if, this is politics. The third thing, when is the last time that you heard a politician, I'm talking about a politician that's the real deal, one that actually has a chance, one that is in the limelight, one that is legit, one that is actually campaigning and doing well and resonating with people. When's the last time you heard somebody like that talk about the deep state, talk about the military industrial complex, how intelligence agencies have lied to you? And we now have the proof. We know that. How Big Pharma has lied to you. We have the proof. It's there. Collusion between the government and the media and tech is something that he's against. The Democrats aren't against it because they're doing it right now. As we speak, they're doing these things. The Democratic Party that I remember, again, child of the 70s and 80s, was that they were skeptical of Big Pharma. They're skeptical of government. They're skeptical of the deep state and intelligence agencies. The CIA was repugnant to them. They were repulsed by the CIA. And now, if you basically say you don't believe the CIA with regard to what was going on in Syria, Libya, Yemen, Israel, Ukraine, if you don't believe them, then somehow that makes you anti-American, that makes you a conspiracy theorist. But the Democrats used to be the ones that, and liberals, I'm lumping them as well, the liberals that supported the Democrats. I mean, it's a two-party state, it's a two-ideology state. They used to be skeptical about this, and now they're not. It's unbelievable, right? What's changed? And here you have somebody who's actually in a position of power to actually make change. One of the biggest speeches of the year, saying that we can't trust what goes on in the intelligence agencies. Oh my God, this is amazing. This is amazing. This is seismic. Okay. Finally, something that I've been arguing with, especially with some of my liberal friends that are really not old school liberals, but just new, they're just partisan hacks. So whoever the liberals are supporting, whatever country you're in, that's who they're going to support, no matter what the policies or issues are. They don't really care about the issues. This is a chance where, if you are anti-war, I mean, let's talk about the big issues. Sending money to wars, right? To help fund genocides in Yemen, help fund this never-ending war that the military-industrial complex wants in the Ukraine, what they did to Libya, what they did to Syria. My God, what they've done to free speech. They want to actively put people in jail for free speech. What they've done to children. The obesity rates in the United States and in Canada are astronomical. They're horrible. They're disgusting. And what we have are people basically don't even want to talk about it because there's a lot of money in our food supply system, and there's a lot of money with regard to healthcare. And if you see my video with Dr. Sunil Dan, it's more profitable to let people get obese and unhealthy, so then we can sell them Ozempic. What you have here is somebody saying, RFK saying, look, I don't agree with this guy. I once said that I hated him. But on these core issues, we're right in line. On the things that people are talking about, they are right in line. And what saddens me is I did an interview with Sabrina Salvati, and it was really short, so I didn't get a chance to push back on one thing. I asked her what happened between her and Jimmy Dore, and she had basically said that Jimmy Dore is, I think she's trying to intimate that he's going after right-wing votes or viewers. I didn't have time to push back. I wish I would have, but again, the interview was going to be done. I wouldn't have been able to get into it. But what I had said was, and I said this before in other videos, and I've said this to my friends, I said this publicly, is there's an opportunity here for an anti-war coalition on the right and the left. If they come around and join and just say, hey, my top 3 issues are censorship, keeping the money in the United States, no more senseless wars abroad, and really trying to preserve real civil liberties, right? Hey, what happened here? I'm all fuzzy because my hands are all over the place. So what you have basically is an opportunity for the first time for somebody on the left and somebody on the right to actually put an end to the Ukraine war. Okay. Now, censorship, they've already made some headway. They're both anti-censorship, and Elon Musk is on board, and he's kind of helping out a bit. Border security. So let's talk about this one for a second, because the Democrats don't want to admit that there's a problem at the border. And yet, if you talk to Black Americans and you look at polling, and you look at the issues they're talking about, again, I talked about this with Sabrina Salvati. Black people, one of their top 3 issues is the border. Why? And immigration. That's what we're talking about, immigration, because they see what's going on in their communities. They see that there are people taking over their communities. They're getting money, they're getting housing, and yet they've been there in their community for years and they get nothing. And there's absolutely no talk about this in RFK's old party, the party that supposedly he left. There's no talk about ending wars. There's no talk about ending censorship. There's no talk about border security. And there's no talk about how to fix the economy. And these are Black voters that are basically saying this. So this coalition has the ability to get Blacks and whites that typically have been against each other. I think that's it. Can we get more Democrats on board? Well, just as I was actually making the slides, I go on YouTube and I see a bunch of videos saying Tulsi Gabbard is basically next. And so you could say, yeah, sure, Dean, sure, you predicted that. But she has been against the war in Ukraine since day one. This is why she got booted out of the Democratic Party. It was because she was against the war in Ukraine. And she single-handedly, she was the one who was responsible for getting Kamala Harris booted out of the primaries in 2020 because she was so bad at the debate. And Tulsi Gabbard absolutely destroyed her. She destroyed her so bad that basically Kamala Harris, without any delegates, basically said, all right, I'm out of here. She was the first one out. And yet now she's running for president. Tulsi Gabbard destroyed her. So you've got a Democrat, an ex-Democrat who's against the war, another Democrat who wants to fix what's going on in healthcare, fix what's going on in big pharma, fix what's going on with regard to free speech. And these are 2 former liberals. They would say they're still liberal. They would say that they haven't left their liberal, whatever their liberal policies, whatever their liberal positions, whatever their liberal worldview would have been. It hasn't changed. They have not changed. Their party has changed. And that's why I thought that this was so honest, this speech, because it was honest. Now, there is one thing to be afraid of if you are against the war. And that is, unfortunately, Trump and RFK, I think, again, Trump, he holds his cards close to the vest. He likes to make deals. And because he likes to make deals, sometimes he actually doesn't let out what he's actually thinking. Right. So it looks like they're both want to support Israel and what's going on in that part of the world. So if you think that war, that Some people call it genocide, the conflict. If you think that will end, I don't know. That's going to be the difficult one. That to me is the biggest question mark. If you look at some of the circumstantial evidence, J.D. Vance, supported by Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel, big Israel supporter. There's still a lot of supporters in the Republican Party. So this war could keep going on, or it's not even a war. It's a one-sided war. But what you can see is possibly a glimmer of hope in something that Donald Trump has said in the past. He said, I want to get a deal done there, but I don't think that Netanyahu wants a deal. And that's what he said. So will Trump just kind of make an executive decision, go in there saying, listen, you're not getting any more money, so you better smarten up yet Netanyahu and stop it? Who knows? But this coalition is possible. And again, when I brought this up to Sabrina Salvati, and I said, is there the opportunity there for a coalition? And I was really disappointed because what I thought I was getting from her was that no, she's going to be all in with the Green Party, even though they basically still can't. They've been trying to run for decades, and they still can't get on every ballot in the United States. So that's kind of a waste of time. And there's a fracture there, right? There's a fracture on the left. There's a fracture on the left. People that are issues based and say, I don't care who's in power. If they can stop the wars and go down the list that I've been talking about in the last few minutes, just go down that list again. If those are my issues, my top 3 or 4 issues, and I see these people over here and they're giving me hope, and these people over here, we know historically haven't done it because the Democrats voted for the war in Iraq when the Bushes wanted to go in. They voted, Obama took the United States to 7 wars, to 7 conflicts. Biden, more conflicts. So there's no hope there. There's nothing there that suggests that there's going to be any change. So why should RFK continue to stay and support this nonsense? So it makes sense. And if you can be a coalition on 3 or 4 issues, then the other ones don't seem as important. So, you know, I don't know. Is this a viable coalition? Hey, it's politics, and I rarely get hopeful for. I mean, I think people should be hopeful, but I'm not hopeful just because I've been watching politics since I was just a kid. I remember as a kid watching politics, and I could see even at a young age that, oh my God, most of this is theater and nonsense, and these people are liars. But maybe what you're seeing here is, let me stop share. What you're seeing here is maybe because you have anti-establishment individuals like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK. Let's get back here. Maybe this could be a first. Maybe this is the first time that I can remember seeing a political move like this that, I mean, the haters are going to say that this is cynical, but this looks to me like one of the least cynical moves I've seen by a politician. And again, this is coming from somebody who despises politicians, who has nothing but contempt for all of them, because they lie. That's what they do. They lie, and the media lies for them. So I hope that gives my student and anyone else who's interested into some of my insights, whatever I know about this. But I think it was a seismic speech because there were some honest points in there, and the things that I talked about, I think, are legit, and I think could be the basis for some real change. All right, so that's going to be that. Make sure you guys take care of yourselves, and remember, don't trust anyone over the age of 30. Cheers.